And for our closing session, we wanted to offer an opportunity for everyone to do some reflecting on the day, sharing some of what they've learned, and having a chance to ask each other any questions you might have. We're going to be doing this in a somewhat abbreviated fashion because we have about 20 minutes. But these are all the ways to help us learn from the day, move ahead with building the evidence base for personalized learning. We could have the next slide, please. Great, thank you. So we're going to do this using something called Storm Chats, and I'll put in a plug for Pat Fitzsimmons at the Vermont Agency of Education, who cites this actually in a report that's coming out next week from Competency Works about professional learning and assessment systems in Vermont. But she talks about doing Storm Chats when you're as a remote learning tip, and here's how they work. I'll pose a question to everyone, then you'll have 2 minutes to think about the question and type a response into the chat box. But here's what's different from usual. You won't post your comment until the end of the 2 minutes. And then I'll ask everyone to post their comments at the same time. This has the advantage that you have some time to think and everyone has the chance to contribute. So you're not all distracted reading other people's typing. After everyone posts their comments, we'll give you a little while to read what people have written. And then the last step is we'll invite you to either say more about what you wrote, ask someone else to say more about what they wrote, or comment on what someone else wrote. Okay, so any of those things, basically any conversation is game, and you'll be able to unmute yourself and do that out loud if you'd like. More than welcome to do that, or you could do it within the chat box. Okay. Let's see, next slide, please. Okay, so the first Storm Chat question for the end of the day of a convening on this topic are, what are 1 or 2 important next steps for building the evidence base for personalized learning? Remember, you have 2 minutes, maybe we'll do 90 seconds given our shortened time. You have 90 seconds to think and write into the chat box, but don't post until I say it's time. Okay, so let's go ahead and start now. Okay, so we have 15 seconds and then we'll all post. Great, so everybody can go ahead and post what they've written. All right, it is a storm indeed, a storm of chat. Let's just take a little time and read what people have written. And while you're doing that, think about what you might want to ask people to elaborate on, or what you might want to, and could I have the next slide, sorry. These are the 3 things that you want to think about. Something more you want to say, something you want to ask others to say, or a comment you'd like to make on what others wrote. So let's just take a minute and read here. Wow. This is fantastic. I don't know about you, but I'm reading fast and I'm still not done. All right, well, fantastic. That's really just a wealth of ideas there. And so let me ask, what would you like to ask others about that they wrote, or what would you like to elaborate on that you wrote yourself? Um, yeah, I think that's probably enough, or commenting, like giving feedback on what someone else wrote. And feel free to unmute yourself. Feel free to just type into the chat box, but maybe talking would be great if you're so inclined.
Elliot, this is Andy. I was just going to write, and then I thought, let's just say it. Bill Zima, super +1 on your comment about making sure that we are super clear and trying to be pervasive about the definition of the new of student success in the 21st century, because then research can sort of gather around that.
Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, Elliot, I just wanted to +1 something that Gilliam Joe at LEAP was talking about in our breakout group around just the importance of thinking about communications and dissemination from the beginning of the design process for research and not finishing everything and just dropping it in the hands of your marketing comms people. So just +1 on that.
Great. Yeah, absolutely.
+1 for me too, Jill. Thanks.
I really like what Rebecca Wolf said about the field-based summit that Competency Works did back in 2010, where we can really come together on that single definition around research practice policy so that we're all together in that whole piece as we're talking about it.
Oh, and we so want to be all together again. It feels good to be this together, but boy, do we want to be really, really together. So yeah, that's a thank you, Brenda. I hear somebody unmuting. Andy, I thought it was fascinating what you wrote about looking to other fields like climate change, the climate change field, to think about how they have changed hearts and minds and how that might be relevant to changing the education system toward personalized learning. Great idea. I'll leave the air open for a few more seconds. Feel free to say more about your own comment as well. I don't know if anyone's done that, or ask others to say more about what they already wrote. I'll leave that in the air for a little bit longer before we move on to the next chat.
Well, this is Emily. I'm ever inspired by Gilliam and her devout focus on ensuring that we are approaching all of our work with equity in mind. And given all of the events of this year and seems like a recommitment to driving equity, this work is so important to drive equity in learning, and we need to think about equitable practices in our research as much as we do in our work.
I wanted to amplify what Rebecca said around possibly doing some kind of a meta-analysis, but also creating some kind of a, not like the federal What Works Clearinghouse, but something like it that has different standards for quality in research, but that puts in one place all of the research that has been conducted to date on the impacts of personalized learning. I think that would really advance the field.
Yeah, and the idea of an alternative what works clearinghouse, like a proposal, you know, if we think that the current IES standards don't get us to where we want, that was a discussion we just had in a chat room. If we don't think that the what works clearinghouse standards get us there, maybe we need to propose an alternative and say, okay, well, this is what works clearinghouse number 2, or, you know, a second tent or something. Anything else on this one? Okay, great. Let's move on to storm chat number 2. I'm sure this is going to be all we have time for, because we do have a 2 to 3 minute wrap up, and we want to have everybody on the road by 4, so to speak. So storm chat number 2 is, what was something valuable you learned or an insight you had as part of today's convening? Okay, same instructions as before. Let's take about 90 seconds and answer this question. Okay, so about 10 more seconds. All right, and let's post. And let's just take a couple minutes to read. Wow, what another great storm. Great, well, we just have 3 or 4 minutes. So I'm wondering, could we have the next slide, please? Oh, I think we already got it. Thank you. If you'd like to say something more about your own comments, ask others to say more about what they wrote or comment on what someone wrote. We would welcome that. I'm still reading. I know I'm supposed to be facilitating, sorry. Well, I'm noticing a theme here that a lot of people are focusing on issues of equity, both in the previous storm chat and in this one. Clearly, it's a topic and a huge part of the work that we all know is essential. And I think that we all are working hard on and feeling that we're not doing enough on at the same time. And maybe that's part of what I'm picking up in some of this a substantial thread of what's here. Other comments or plus ones or requests for elaboration? I think what I'm going to do is move into our closing. I know that's hard with a group this size for people to break in. So I think this is probably a good time for us to wrap up. And I'm so glad, by the way, in my chat room just now, a little while ago, people were saying they'd really love to have a transcript of the chat. And I just want to let you know that we heard that. And as far as sharing materials from today, we will be back in touch with you about a process for that. Let's just want to get to the right part of my notes here.
Yeah, Elliot, while you're transitioning, I'll just jump in. This is Susan. I am just want to thank everybody so much. We've spent 5 hours together of intense work today, and the contributions of everyone has been so immense. And I just recognize this reminds me what an amazing group of people we have in our field and how everyone is so generous just to be sharing and sharing their own wisdom with the collective to advance what we're all trying to do in student learning. So I personally have deep gratitude, and to the comment of learning from other systems or other fields, one of the things we'll be doing next week at the symposium, and please forgive me if this is somewhat of a plug, but for the symposium virtual is compacted in 3 days, but on the first day we really are looking at systems change, and we're going to ask Rebecca Winthrop from Brookings to share her research on what she's seen from other countries that have gone in crisis that have been able to leapfrog their systems and what we can learn about those levers. And I'm hoping that continues to inspire us and give us hope about the change. The second day is really focused on practice around personalized and competency-based learning through the lens of high quality equity. And the last day is very focused on equity and whole child social emotional learning back through implementers of personalized competency-based. So thank you. I feel like I miss you and have gotten really so much out of today. Thank you for your time. And Elliot, I'll turn it back to you for the final word.
Thanks, Susan. Yeah, just to repeat what Susan said, we so appreciate everyone's participation in the day. It will be so helpful as we move forward on building the evidence base for personalized learning. Really just had an incredible density of people doing this work on the planet in one small place, sort of one small virtual space today. As we do wrap up the day, I want to mention that we'll be emailing you a very brief survey, and we'd greatly appreciate if you could take 2-3 minutes to give us some feedback. We'd again like to thank the Leon Lowenstein Foundation for their very generous support of today's convening. We greatly appreciate all of our presenters for sharing such valuable information about their work in schools, their research projects, and their work to make their findings useful to the field. And finally, we want to thank everyone who participated in the convening today for your great engagement and the work you're doing every day to advance personalized learning. So that's it. It's 3:59. We made it. It was fantastic having us all together today. Thank you. we look forward to keeping in touch and wishing good health to everybody and your families and communities. So take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so
Bye,
much.
everybody.
Bye.